Good morning and welcome to today's Join the Dots. And you're probably confused by the title. The title is Dollar to Fall to Gold 8,000. Yes, most people are confused, I think, by what is happening to precious metals and in fact most commodities. And they see them rising in value. Or are they rising in value? Or are the currencies falling in value? When you start to listen to the very best voices out there, you realise that it's the latter. Currencies are falling in value. If you can get that into your head, it becomes clearer as to the dots that I've joined to come to that conclusion. If we look around the world now, and we look around at the central banks, and there are hundreds and hundreds of stories on the central banks. I have my belief, but let's not go there today. Let's just talk about the numbers. The numbers show you, and we'll work from the top down, shall we? If we start with Japan, Japan's central bank owns the equivalent of 100% of the country's GDP in the country's government bonds issued. 100%. I kid you not. I kid you not. Then we move on to Europe and the EU, and you think, no, not the, yes, the EU. The ECB holds 30% equivalent of GDP in various countries' government bonds. And the UK is 25%. And then you look at America and you think, well, America's awful. We hear about the dollar all the time. It's collapsing. 15% of GDP held by the Fed. And then you look at China and you think, well, I've told you all about China. I've told you how the economy is collapsing, haven't I? And I've told you about the politics being very disturbed at the moment, very uncertain. I still believe President Xi or General Secretary Xi will not be the General Secretary of the Communist Party at the end of September, maybe sooner. But what is their holding as a percentage of GDP of government bonds? It's 10%. But hold on. Yes, it's only 10%, but if you take the local government investment vehicles, which is 100% of GDP, they're all going to have to be bought by the central bank. There's no other buyer. No one else wants them. They haven't got any cash flow. They're not building anything. They're not selling any land because no developer's able to build anything because they haven't got any money. They're all bust. Yes, there'll be selective developments, but there's not the structural development that there was for the last 15 years up to 2021, when I first foresaw a Chinese property implosion. And we've seen it. It's unfolded in front of us. Unfolded. Evergrande, Country Garden, Logan, Vanke, Greenland, Sunak, Shimau, bust. The entire industry is almost bust. And the electric vehicle industry is going that way. But what does it mean? It means there's an awful lot more debt in their system that at the moment is issued by parties outside the government, local government investment vehicles they're called. And they have 100% of China's GDP issued in bonds, which the central bank will be the only buyer. So I'm going to add that in and say 110%. So you see, the real weakness is not gold becoming strong, it's currencies becoming weak. It's the same effect, I know, but if you understand it's the currencies that are falling, it's easier to understand the possible problems we all face in terms of inflation, which isn't zero, is it? And it's not 2%, come on, please. Anyone who believes a 2.5, 2.6, 2.61, 2.614 recurring percentage CPI, forget it. Because for the vast majority of the population, inflation is probably 8 to 10%, because their money, their entire income, net income, gets spent on food, fuel, housing. And none of those are at 2.6%, are they? They will be soon. We'll see. So I've talked to you about the macroeconomics, and I want to reintroduce you again to a brilliant commentator, Mario, And his site is Mannarino, Maneco 64, which I guess is his date of birth. Mannarino 64 is a really, really good site. And today's lecture or presentation is absolutely superb. So please go and look at it. It's called Hold On To Your Gold and Silver for Dear Life as the IOU Nothing Currencies Unravel. And that's the point of this exercise. The point of this discussion is to say all the currencies are weakening. The only reason they're strong is because the central banks are buying all the bonds. So this system is fraught now. It's cracking in every direction. It started in the 1980s, late 80s with Japan, and they proved that the people are so stupid that allow the central bank to buy 100% of the bonds and 50% of the stock market, and who cares as long as we get our pay at the end of the week and everything's fine. But it's not fine, is it? It's not fine. And now we've seen the other countries go down the same path. But here we come to an interesting one, because here you see the dollar. The Fed is only holding 15% of in GDP terms of bonds, government bonds. And yet the euro, or the ECB, 30%. Bank of England, 25%. Bank of Japan, 100%. So the point of this is to give you the very, very macro on currencies to set the scene for the total collapse of the fiat currency system, because it's reaching a point of unsustainability. And that is what the dollar is showing us. And we've seen the dollar move down. We've seen it move down 12% against the euro since the beginning of this year, 8% against sterling, 7% against the yen. 7% against the yen, where the Bank of Japan is holding 100% of GDP of Japanese government bonds. So everything is on very, very shaky ground. The currencies are only being held up, and therefore inflation held down, by central banks buying as many of the bonds as they need to buy to keep the currency at a certain level. This is not sustainable. Okay, it's not sustainable. So when you listen to Mario, you will hear an awful lot of facts, and he will revisit John Emptor as well, this economist that I talked to you about, Emptor's inverted pyramid. He will re-examine John's thoughts, and they're very important. And you should listen to them, because I think he was ahead of his time. I think he could see where the world was going and therefore what the consequences might be. For those who want an instant answer to everything, and there's 90% of the world's population, I think, is in that boat, I've talked to you about gold and silver, and I've talked to you about what I've done personally. And I've invested in gold and silver miners. And I've invested a little bit in crypto. Why? Because I can see two possible solutions to this unsustainable currency collapse. Okay? I know it's horrible to link COVID into this, but I have to do it. If you link COVID in, what did COVID prove? It proved that if they could throw 100% fear at you, they could totally control you, and they could do what they wanted. In other words, you took a vaccine that was untested, unproven, took 9 months to develop, whereas a vaccine takes 7 years, doesn't inoculate, doesn't prevent spread, but you took it. So they can make you do anything when it reaches crisis point. And that's where I believe we're heading with the financial system. And when we get to that crisis point, a new, wonderful, only possible solution will be given to you. And you will take it, because you'll have no choice. And so this is why the currencies are all weakening against the commodities. You saw copper hit an all-time high yesterday, I believe. And we see gold at 3,300 plus. We see silver at 36. For most people, it's difficult to contemplate buying gold bullion or silver bullion. It just seems so abstract almost. You know, it's something that the central banks do. No, you can do it, you can do it. But you have to be very, 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 very careful. Because this is a time when the agencies that sell, the companies that sell gold, silver, coins, whatever, will fleece the public because they can, because the fear allows them to do it. So you have to be really on your guard when you're buying anything from a dealer, which just go back to, you can just do a simple search on Google every day, price of gold, price of silver, and it will spew up the absolute spot price. And therefore you can test it against whatever you're being suggested as to buy in gold or silver. You can just test it. And if it's more than a few % wrong, you're being fleeced. So be careful. So coming back to the point, gold, or rather the dollar, will fall to gold $8,000. That's what I believe is entirely possible. Silver, it could be much more of a percentage rise, because you have to think that when the public come in, can they afford gold at 8,000? Can they afford Bitcoin at 100,000? No, they can't, can they? You have to break it down into ETFs, you have to break it down, break it down, break it down, and then the people don't really see what they're buying. And then you haven't got control of it, because now you've got another counterparty, you've got the ETF holder. Have they really got the Bitcoins in the reserve or not? You don't know. All right, so you have to be careful here. And you have to be very, very, very sort of, you have to focus on what you're doing. For me, as I've told you before, I've actually taken the route of investing in gold and silver miners. Now, I'll come back to that tomorrow and we'll talk about it tomorrow. I've taken a break from fascism because it's such a heavy subject. I think it's incredibly relevant, and it's relevant to this as well. Everything will come together, I promise you, because everything is coming to that point where it will come together. And just to show you a topical story yesterday, to show you again where we are in this world. What happened yesterday? What was the big news item? Epstein. So, where is the Epstein list? How can Ghislaine Maxwell be in jail if there's no list of clients? It's not possible, is it? It's not possible. But the DOJ, Pam Bondi, and the FBI, Bongino and Patel, have now said there is no list. Think about this corporate fascism, think about the fascism, think about the fact that they have to lie, to maintain a crumbling system. They have to lie. The best tweet on this I've seen is from Elon Musk, and it's just brilliant, and I'll put it in the description below. I'll link it in so you can see it, okay? It's just 4 lines, brilliance. Simplicity is always brilliance. So coming back to the title of this story, the dollar will fall to 8,000 gold. Silver will fall, or sorry, the euro will fall to a similar level, probably 8,000, because I can see them being around parity when the crisis hits. So don't be fooled by currency movements. Think of them in terms of gold and silver, and think of them in terms of how much support each central bank is having to give to maintain the currency at a rate at which it's falling now. Okay, so we'll come back tomorrow and we'll talk about gold and silver investments. And then I will revisit the other issues that we've talked about in the last few days, because they're so important. I know the numbers down. I look at the viewing numbers and they're well down because it's not a sexy title. But believe me, it's a vital title. Thank you.